The college football playoff's decision to stand pat at 12 teams for the 2026 season did more than preserve the current postseason structure. It reopened one of the sport's oldest, most emotionally charged debates, dragging Notre Dame's independent status back into the center of college football's cultural fault lines. When the CFP Management Committee failed to reach consensus on expansion, the ripple effects were immediate and unavoidable. Notre Dame's existing Memorandum of Understanding with the playoff remains intact, meaning the Fighting Irish will qualify for the CFP if they finish inside the top 12 of the final rankings. For many, that clause is a procedural footnote. For Stephen A. Smith, it was gasoline on a fire that has been smoldering for decades. On Friday's episode of First Take, Smith delivered one of his trademark rants, his voice rising with every sentence as frustration poured out. The issue, as he framed it, wasn't merely Notre Dame's access to the playoff, it was the principle behind it. Why, Smith asked, does Notre Dame operate under a different set of rules? Why does college football continue to carve out exceptions for a single program while every other national contender must survive the grind of conference play, championship games, and shared revenue structures? To Smith, the answer was as unacceptable as it was familiar. Tradition, he implied, has been allowed to outweigh competitive equity for far too long. Smith's words were blunt, even by his standards. He questioned what makes Notre Dame so damn special, calling the situation sickening and urging the program to join a conference and compete like everyone else. It was a rant delivered with heat, but also with the polish of someone who understands the emotional currency of college football. Smith wasn't just criticizing Notre Dame, he was tapping into a frustration felt by fans, administrators, and coaches across the country who believe the sport bends too easily for one brand, no matter how iconic. At the heart of the controversy is Notre Dame's Memorandum of Understanding with the CFP, an agreement that only applies to a 12 or 14-team playoff. Under the current structure, Notre Dame qualifies automatically if it finishes in the top 12. Had the playoff expanded to 14 teams, the Irish would have been guaranteed a bid if they finished 13th or better, thanks to the increased number of at-large spots. That hypothetical only sharpened the criticism. To detractors, it represents a safety net unavailable to any other program, a built-in cushion that softens the consequences of independence. The frustration isn't theoretical, it is rooted in recent history. During the past season, Notre Dame spent multiple weeks ranked 9th in the CFP standings, positioned ahead of both Alabama and Miami. As the regular season wound down, however, the Irish slipped to number 10, falling behind the Crimson Tide after Alabama's late-season resume was weighed more heavily by the committee. The Tide had gone to Athens earlier in the year and beaten Georgia on the road, a result that carried significant weight despite Alabama later being routed by Georgia in the SEC championship game. That sequence of decisions became a flashpoint. On Selection Sunday, the committee kept Alabama at number 9 following its conference title game loss and moved Miami ahead of Notre Dame, honoring a head-to-head tiebreaker between the Hurricanes and the Irish. The decision raised eyebrows because similar tiebreakers had not been consistently applied in earlier rankings. CFP Committee Chair Hunter Yurachek later explained that Miami's positioning was influenced by how BYU performed in the Big 12 championship game, an explanation that only added to the perception of fluid, sometimes opaque criteria. For Smith, those nuances didn't change the fundamental issue. He was clear that he respects Notre Dame as a program and believes the Irish deserved postseason consideration based on their performance. His argument wasn't that Notre Dame was unworthy, it was that the path they traveled lacked a critical component shared by their competitors. While Alabama was bruised and battered from the SEC championship game, Notre Dame, Smith pointed out, was at home, watching. The reason, he emphasized, is simple. Notre Dame does not belong to a conference. That absence, in Smith's view, matters. Conference championships are not just ceremonial trophies, they are extra data points, extra pressure tests that can elevate or expose a team. They demand one more high-stakes performance against elite competition. When Notre Dame sits out that weekend, Smith argues it avoids both the risk and the opportunity that come with it. In a system that values strength of schedule and quality wins, that avoidance, intentional or not, creates an imbalance. Supporters of Notre Dame counter with history and logistics. The Irish independence is woven into the fabric of college football, dating back to a time when regional biases and exclusionary practices made conference affiliation difficult. Over the years, Notre Dame built a national schedule, a coast-to-coast following, and a television deal that allowed it to remain autonomous while still competing at the highest level. To many, forcing Notre Dame into a conference feels like erasing a piece of the sport's identity. But the modern landscape complicates that nostalgia. College football isn't longer a loose collection of regional rivalries. It is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise driven by television contracts, conference realignment, and postseason access. Conferences have grown larger and more powerful, while the playoff has become the ultimate measuring stick. In that context, Notre Dame's independence increasingly feels like an outlier, a relic preserved not because it fits, but because it has always been there. Smith's rant resonated because it captured that tension. His delivery was theatrical, but his core question was straightforward. Can college football continue to preach competitive balance while allowing one program to operate outside the system? Can the playoff be truly equitable if one team's qualification terms are fundamentally different? These are questions the CFP committee has yet to answer definitively. The decision to keep the playoff at 12 teams only amplifies the stakes. Expansion might have diluted some of the resentment by increasing access across the board. Instead, the status quo remains, and with it, Notre Dame's unique position. For every fan who sees the Irish as a deserving blue blood navigating a difficult independent schedule, there is another who sees preferential treatment dressed up as tradition. Stephen A. Smith's rant was not just about Notre Dame, it was about a sport at a crossroads, caught between honoring its past and standardizing its future. His words were loud, confrontational, and impossible to ignore, much like the debate itself. Until Notre Dame joins a conference or the CFP rewrites the rules to eliminate special provisions, this argument will continue to surface season after season, selection show after selection show. And every time it does, voices like Smith's will rise again, demanding answers in a system that has grown accustomed to exceptions.